Hi everybody. I'm finally back. Yes. On top of everything else, my computer actually got broken, and I only have one that I can do voice recordings on. My backup one's camera actually doesn't work. So I was going to make this video last week and then I couldn't, but that's okay. Just a minor setback. Anyway, I thought that for this video it would be fun to talk about something that's going to make me sound totally weird, but hey, there's no pressure since I'm still figuring this out. Why not just talk about what I want? And I'm just going to talk about the weird ways that I see math concepts. So I used to tutor my siblings in math, and that's kind of how I got to thinking about math, like analogies, math games. And then, so I'm definitely going to mark myself as weird. And you may be thinking already, hey, laywoman, Natasha, isn't math just objective? Like, what would that have to do with your religion? Well, I'm not going to sound totally insane and claim that all those examples I'm about to give are literally, that's actually what it's supposed to mean. Because frankly, math is my worst subject, so I don't want to make a moron out of myself. They're just thoughts. I'm just going to put it that way. If they click with you, great. And if they don't come at me for like teaching people inaccurate math. It's just something that I think about, okay? Please, if you have an actual math question, do not ask me. I would be the worst person to ask, probably. But if you like math and you want to elaborate or like give other examples, I am always interested to hear this, because even though I can't do math, I do like having it explained to me if it's doesn't require me to actually do the computation part. We're interested in doing it. So thankfully, thanks to the internet, I don't have to draw any of this. I'm going to start with something simple. Parallel, perpendicular, intersecting lines. Alright, so many Christians, this used to be more popular, like theology, not as much anymore, but they used to, especially, I want to say like during the stargazing eras, like Galileo, Copernicus, people in that area, and then Renaissance or pre-Renaissance really saw a lot of biblical meaning in the way things were arranged in the universe. One thing is lines. Now, the interesting thing about lines is that very often in sci-fi, people use the concept of lines to explain things that are just kind of a little bit paranormal or supernatural. I guess, so I would also say it's not just sci-fi, it's also paranormal writing. And one thing is the infinite time loop, or the infinite loop. You've probably heard that if you're into any sci-fi. And also just infinite lines. And then it was actually debated historically between some cultures whether time is cyclical, which is a more Eastern view, or whether it is linear. Now, I'm going to assume if you clicked on this, you probably already know what that means. But just in case you are a novice. So linear, and I believe I'm going to put the picture here so you can see it, is a line that goes infinitely in both directions. And that's a linear line. Now it can tilt at any angle you want, but it's a straight line that goes infinitely in both directions. Alright? A ray is a line that goes infinitely in one direction, so it has a clear starting point, but it has no stopping point. Right? Okay, this is going to be important in a second. Then a circle is different from a line. And then pretty much all shapes are made out of, we say lines, but technically, geometrically, I think they're actually segments. They are line segments. A line segment is a line with a stopping and starting point. Alright? There with most of my geometry knowledge just in that explanation, but I'm going to do my best to call forth high school right now in my memory and keep explaining. Alright, it's cool, right? Cool concept. A line that goes forever. Now, that's something you can't really picture. So, a lot of things like numbers are infinite. So, they can be represented on an infinite line. But a certain set of numbers is usually represented with a line segment, or sometimes a ray. And because, for instance, counting numbers are not negative. So, they're represented by a ray line generally because they have a starting point. You can go to infinitely. You cannot go the other way though, but integers are infinite both ways. All right? Now, how does this have to do with religious concepts, you may be wondering? I hope you're excited for this because I definitely am, even though I'm going to geek out weirdly right now. Alright, so you take that and you bring it into the Bible. Now, I think you could probably do this with any religion. I know the most about Christianity, and honestly, Christianity to me seems to fit these metaphors the best. But if you want to weigh in with another example, by all means. But for Christianity, Christians believe in an infinite God, right? You know, a God who has no beginning and no end. And so classically, most people in the West picture God then as a line when they think of an infinite timeline, like that God has always been and he always will be. He goes forever in both directions. Okay? And because he goes forever in both directions, we do not. So if you take the Christian view, human beings are rays. We have a starting point, but we have an eternal soul. So though we did not always exist, once we exist, some part of us will always exist in the Christian worldview, whether it is in heaven or hell. And if you really want to play with this concept, you could say that we can go either direction then. You know, if you want to view negative as hell, I don't believe in actual math that negative numbers are like evil or anything, but if you want to make the metaphor like that way because it's a negative amount, hell is viewed in theology, some Christian theology, as basically infinite death, because you can't kill a soul simply by cutting off, like, you can't kill someone's soul by killing their body. Since all souls will exist forever, the only way to kill a soul is to kill it always, continually. There's actually a lot of Greek myths that kind of end in a punishment that sort of plays with this idea. In the Bible, it's basically just literally, yes, you will be dying forever and ever and ever. That's the only way to kill something that's a spirit, not just a soul. It would also apply to fallen angels. Like, anything spiritual has to be killed eternally or it can't be killed at all. And so you could see that as the ray of integers that goes negatively. They will forever be going lower and lower and lower and smaller, but never actually coming to an end. And then if you believe in heaven and you go to heaven, you are forever increasing, like into new greatness. And actually the Great Divorce book that C.S. Lewis wrote kind of plays with that concept a little bit as well. But I won't go into that because this is not a book review video. Okay, interesting. I hope so, because this is the stuff I literally just sit and think about sometimes. I was just hoping other people were weird like me. Alright, that's interesting, right? But so is God a line then? Maybe. However, in some more older Christian theology, and I think some modern as well, Christian theologians posited that God is actually not a line, he is a circle. Which a circle is basically just a line, but it's in circular form, right? And the reason that people believe this is because a circle is actually an infinite shape. See, a line, it's kind of hard to really like put a lot of personality on it because it's just a flat line. Once you have an actual shape, you kind of have something with a bit more body to it. So when it comes to imagining a being with a personality, we tend to go to shapes, you know. Of course, a circle is only like one step up, really. It's only a two-dimensional shape. But what it helps give us is the idea of something without beginning and end, because if you trace a flawless, perfect circle, which most people cannot do, but if you can do it, props to you, you will see that there is no clear beginning. There's no clear end. I mean, when you put the pencil on the page, yes, you have beginning and end, but if you do it right, once you're finished, nobody can tell where it ends or where it began, except you. And there you have the idea of God. Now, this actually goes way, way back hundreds of years in math. You may have heard this if you like old literature analysis, and I do recommend Overly Sarcastic Productions channel for a simple breakdown of this book, although I don't agree with all their conclusions, but and that would be Dante's Paradiso, specifically the Paradiso part. The whole thing's totally called Dante's Inferno, but that's actually only the first part of the book. So in Dante's Paradiso, which I don't think I'm saying right, but oh well, He imagines God is basically 3 interlocking concentric circles. You know what? I'm not sure concentric's the right word here. I told you guys I was bad at math. But intertwined circles. And that's how he imagines God. And people find that kind of bizarre reading it. And if they don't remember that the idea of old mathematics, and remember this was heavily influenced by religion because back then was the time of religious oligarchy for a lot of countries. Religion did influence their view of science a lot. So coming up with the concept of God as a circle, it kind of just makes sense. Anyway, moving on. That's just a thought. And I'd love to elaborate on all this, but I'm not going to have enough time to elaborate on it in detail. But so God is an infinite shape with no clear beginning, no end. What I also like about using a circle instead of a line is that with a circle you have area, and that brings us to another little interesting math fact. To me, like, this just proves that God writes himself into every part of our world. You may choose not to see it that way. I think it's interesting either way. If you have taken pre-algebra, I'm sure you already know that the way that outside of a circle is called its diameter. Now that you can measure pretty much exactly. Sorry, I said diameter. I meant the circumference. Okay. Yes, the rim of a circle is called the circumference. Sorry, I was thinking of 2 different terms there. No, the diameter is the line that goes across it. All right, so I do know the difference, guys. I just forgot. I just said the wrong thing. Okay, so across it, diameter, right? And then half the diameter is the radius. So far, these are all what we call rational numbers that we can measure if you get a measuring tape and measure it. But here's the interesting part. At least in what we currently understand of math, it is impossible to find the exact area of a circle. Because to find the area inside a circle, you must use a number that we all call pi. And pi it's approximately 3 1/7. But the funny thing, mind-blowing thing, is that every time we find the area of a circle using pi, we use an approximation. Now, it's a very, very close approximation to the point where the difference to human, eyes and construction wouldn't be a significant enough difference. The margin for error, it's not enough to, throw you off. But the literal, fact is, at least as of now, we cannot find an exact measurement for the area because you use pi and you get an infinite amount of non-repeating digits. It's a very strange number. Weird, right? And where I think that's interesting if you're looking at it through a Christian lens is that if you view God as a circle, again, an infinite shape with no beginning and no clear end, then another facet of Christian theology is that God's, what is inside God, is limitless. It cannot be measured. It cannot be completely defined or grasped by human concept. We can't fit it inside our heads. And as it turns out, what is inside a circle is something that no human can completely accurately measure, no matter how close we get. Again, the difference in math for practical reasons is pretty insignificant. But from a philosophical standpoint, it's interesting that what is known, and not just in Christianity, but actually many cultures, as an infinite shape, also has an infinite area, even though it's inside a closed space. Now, okay, I understand that doesn't mean the area actually does go forever. It just means that we can't find, the complete, accurate, measurement of what the area is. But that in of itself is pretty bizarre in a closed, fixed space that we have, and that's just something that we can make. Let alone, the broader implications of irrational numbers even existing to begin with is kind of weird. When you think about it, how can there be numbers that, infinitely repeat to begin with? But that is how math works. Even though nothing that man made can be infinite, yet we can measure it with equations that rely on the idea of infinity. Which I think is just a comment on how overall, all man's creations and attempts are still bound by laws that we cannot fully understand. Though some brilliant people can get very, very close to a perfect understanding of it, but even the best mathematician in the world is going to admit there are some things that just, in math, like, no matter how well they can do it, why it works that way is still kind of a mystery. One last little thought. So moving back to perpendicular and parallel lines, or straight lines, I hadn't actually gotten to the perpendicular parallel part yet, but I'm not going to show you a picture of it. So, remember when I said that you can think of God as a line, you can think of humans as a line as well? Well, here's a little interesting, another little geometric like fact. So, if you have intersecting lines, that means there's one point the two lines meet at, right? And generally in an equation, this point is significant for measuring something, but I'm not going to get into that part. And generally, you can make that. You can do a lot of things with an intersecting line. Actually, I'm not sure that it's called an equation. I forget what the name is. I told you I'm not really good at the technical part of this. But anyway, for the purpose of this, you just need to see the picture. A parallel line are two lines that are both straight. They're both infinite. They do not ever intersect. All right. So perpendicular lines are lines that can only intersect at one point. See, other intersecting lines, it's possible sometimes for them to intersect more than once. If they're functions, equations, but perpendicular can only intersect one place, and it is a right angle, as you can see in the picture. So, when I was looking at this image once, I guess, when I was working on math, it kind of struck me, and this is where it gets hokey sounding, and again, I'm not saying this is literally what it has to mean. I just think it's interesting, if you want to use a math analogy for it. Okay, so don't at me, guys, but you probably already guessed where I'm going with this. So the cross itself is actually a set of perpendicular lines. Okay, I mean, I know like the literal cross probably wasn't two completely straight lines, but they were at least, together at a basically a perpendicular angle, we think, So that's what Jesus died on. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So, if you view mankind as one infinite line, going one direction, we'll say the wrong direction for the purpose of this analogy, and God is another infinite line going the right direction. Those two lines, because of man's sin, going the wrong way, or separated from God, we'll say, maybe not the wrong way, because in this case, that it might be easier to just say, like, separated. Man separated from God, they're like two parallel lines. They will never intersect ever again because of the chasm of sin. But you introduce Jesus in the Christian faith, the point that reconciles, like, God and man, and you find that they can again intersect only at one point, though. Like, only Jesus, there is no other way for those two lines to intersect except that one point, and that's how Jesus resolves the gap between man and God. Again, this is merely an analogy, but I think it's an interesting analogy. I mean, because, all the ways, Jesus could have died, it just happens to be on a shape that kind of, fits. You may think it's reaching, but I just think it's fascinating. There's a lot more you could do with this, but I think I'm going to leave those examples for now. If, on the slim chance that enough people actually watch this to, request another video, maybe, you could, put, any other math, any other concepts you think that it'd be interesting to find math analogies for in the Bible. I think that there's a lot you could do with this. I have other ideas. I also could just do a separate video talking about what different numbers mean in the Bible and maybe how you could expand that using math. But for now, I'm going to leave it at this one and just see if it piqued anybody's interest, because for me, this was kind of this is just something that I think about. But what is the internet for if not putting random crap that you just sit and think about, like, up and seeing if anybody else is as weird as you? So, there you go. It's out there, people. Tell me what you think. Hopefully leave a like, because I really like to see this new channel start getting some traction. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.